Hi, thanks for joining me on Basketball Australia's Building Better Basketball podcast series. And today I'm joined by Kath Van Tonder, who is the sports chaplain with Kilsyth Basketball in Melbourne. Jackie Dover, who is a WNBL referee, also involved in local referee programs in Queensland and runs an academy for talented officials. And we've got Peter Gibbs, who is the player Development and Wellbeing Manager with the Australian Basketball Players Association. Thanks for jumping on this podcast, guys.
Pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we know we've been through an extraordinary situation as a country, as communities with the break from COVID, and that has been very challenging for a lot of people and in many contexts. Has that challenge been felt? And this podcast is all about the mental well-being and the mental welfare of the people within our basketball community. And thankfully, different in different states, but our time frames of being able to get back to that community are coming up reasonably fast. And WA, for instance, and Northern Territory, they are back to competition, which I know they've really enjoyed. But first, Peter, if I can ask you, how important is feeling that you're part of a community, feeling like you're part of your local association? How important can that be to a person's well-being?
Well, it's extremely important. It flows into the area of sense of belonging, which is a pretty big area of research in psychology. I've researched and published a couple of journal articles on that area myself with particular groups. So generally, most people in a population feel a sense of belonging to that population. When there's some marginalised groups, they may struggle sometimes with feeling a sense of belonging to their particular community. But that sense of belonging is that idea, particularly for people who are very focused on basketball, and having been around associations myself for a lot of years, it's a big part of people's lives, of the whole family's life. It can really dominate their entire existence. Training every night. The kids have all got different trainings on different nights, and Saturdays and Friday nights and Sundays. I feel for parents with all the travel they do, but they probably get as much out of it as the kids, in the sense that they have a belonging to that particular community. So they belong to the broader community, but that sense that they all do little things and they interact and they have sausage sizzles and they're constantly around the people that they're with Friday nights and coordinating and all of that in the groups that they're in. So to have that suddenly taken away from them can cause quite a gap. And there's definitely anxieties that absolutely pop up because of that loss of belonging. They're talking now in psychology about new type of anxiety that they're seeing and will continue to grow. I think it's called post-ISO anxiety. So that sense of coming out of isolation and having to re-establish yourself in your group. Even though it might be exciting and that's what you're dying to get back to, there's still an anxiety about it, because humans generally don't deal well with change. That's one thing that we like, consistency. So that's something that people are going to struggle with for sure. Who struggles with it? There's no way of predicting that until we start seeing that. But definitely that sense of belonging to a community or a group is very important for people.
Great, thanks for that. Kath, you've been involved with the Kilsyth Basketball Association long before the COVID isolation period was imposed upon us. Can you just tell us a little bit about what your role with the Kilsyth Association is?
Sure. I'm the sports chaplain at Kilsyth, and I got my role in August 3 years ago. So my role is I came alongside and we'd had a referee suicide, and I came on about 4 months after that had happened. So my role at Kilsyth is predominantly working alongside the technical advisor there, and just how to support referees the best way that I can. I attend tribunal throughout the week. If I'm not at tribunal, I go there because we've got 4 courts, 4 stadiums. So I pick a time and a session, and I just go there and watch the referees, just encourage them if they've done, well, and support them if they haven't gone so well. And I'm not only limited to the referees, but predominantly after the trauma that they received. That's sort of where the CEO at the time and I thought would be best to start at. So I absolutely love my role. So as Peter talked about, like that community and acceptance of me has been amazing. So it's like I've always been there. And so just encouragement for me is probably the primary role, just to come alongside people. And because I'm independent, I'm that person that's not staff, I'm not a coach, I'm not a player, I'm not a referee, although I have been all of those. I'm that independent person where I can be a safe person where they can come and express issues, and, it might even be within the basketball community or outside the community. So that's sort of my role and because we haven't ever had a chaplain in referee community, it's just a evolving role. So yeah, but it's terrific. But it makes it a little bit hard when there's 4 stadiums to get around to everybody. So I have a bit of a roster that I make sure that I go to this stadium that session and this, and put in variety, that I get to meet all the supervisors and all the different referees that we have.
And Jackie, you're in local associations up in Queensland. Are there similar roles performed in those associations?
I don't necessarily think we have the luxury of Kath and having someone like Kath at the association. I know that we've got a few now within Queensland that are full-time referee development managers, and I guess not so much a chaplain as such, but they're more full-time, so they're touching base. I know I'm that person for the Gold Coast basketball, being the RDM there, but just trying to check in with them, trying to touch on their welfare as much as we can, and juggle games based on what's going on in life as well. I know I was just on the phone to one of our referees just before about coming back post-COVID, and some stuff has happened during that time. So how are we going to now manage that so then it's not an overload for their family, but then they're still getting that time away to feel part of the community and come back and get their exercise, but then also their bit of social life back now that we've got games resuming next week. So,
and of course, as Peter was saying, it's not just referees, and it's not just anxiety necessarily related specifically to the basketball community. We're bringing a whole lot of ourselves when we come to a community. But what sort of behaviours within our basketball association can impact upon someone's feeling of worth and well-being, whether they're a player, a referee, a coach? What sort of behaviours can be occurring? Pete, perhaps.
Was that at me?
Yeah, start with that.
Well, they're interesting places, associations. There's a lot of politics at play, and I've played a number of roles there, and being on the board, and there's a lot of politics and games outside of the actual game that are played, but that's part of being a group. You would like to think that just because everyone's gone through a really difficult time in the last few months, that people will just be a little bit nicer and let certain things go. And I imagine that that's mostly going to be the case. But yeah, look, there'll be people that will be frustrated, and certainly particularly the participants, like people playing the game. There'd be that sense with, for athletes in that role as an athlete, it's there's always that sense I'm completely judged by my statistics. Yes, in a basketball community, I'm basically a walking statistic. So if my statistics aren't great, then that's how I'm judged. So there's a natural anxiety that comes with that for athletes, all the way through to professional athletes. I think it starts fairly young, and you see that, and it can be that anxiety often is encouraged by parents that get way too caught up in how many minutes their kids are playing and how good they think their kids are and all of that. So they'll I think people will return back to reasonably normal, but I would like to think that people are going to be a little bit nicer, a little bit kinder, and let a little bit go, just because everyone knows everyone's been through a difficult time. So,
and there is things about sport that can lead to disappointment. We lost the grand final. A referee didn't get appointed. I didn't get selected in the team. Those sort of things are part and parcel of sport. Kath, are they some of the discussions that the referees have with you in your role?
Yeah, I get the whole gamut of discussions. Like, they'll often talk to me about their schooling, how they're, a lot of them are sort of that VCE age, and, how they're going with school. And, they do want to be the best referees that they can possibly be. So, they can get a bit disheartened sometimes. So, my role is to encourage them in that. For us in Victoria, there's been a few little adjustments that, the referees are going to have to make. So, a lot of it is actual almost personal life. It's not even so much basketball, because basketball is just that one aspect. So I get a lot of, how things are going at home, schooling, work situations, sometimes marriage situations. So there is just the whole gamut, and I never know when I sit down or start chatting to someone where the conversation will lead. So there's no particular direction, but for me, at least they're talking. That's the positive thing. They're actually making conversation, and from that conversation gives you a opportunity to perhaps ask leading questions, and how are you going with this and how are you going with that. So for me, I'm sort of preparing, because a lot of our referees they've lost money, which some actually are like full-time referees. So how they're paying their rent and things like that. So, and sort of with this setback, I think the community, or Peter might be the same, like we've just seen in Victoria, just this sadness almost, like, oh, we were getting to the finish line, and now we've just hit the proverbial bus. And you can just feel like in the society, just this deep sigh, really. So, and then the basketball community won't be any different. So, yeah, so you get to read on social media. That can be a really good indicator how people are going as well. So,
okay, so asking someone within that you only know through basketball, and you don't see them in any other context, asking them about how they're feeling, where, as you're saying, Kath, it may, whatever's impacting on their feelings may have absolutely nothing to do with basketball. It might be school, home, work, all those things. Does a basketball person in the basketball community, is that a good thing to ask someone, or are you just being a little bit nosy and you're not part of their broader community, so you shouldn't be asking about that? Jackie, what do you think?
I think it comes down to a bit of rapport that you've got with the person too. If someone's seems a bit off, I don't think there's any harm in just going, hey, just wanted to check you're all right. Or you can tell in a game, from a referee point of view, if your partner's being a bit more reactive to stuff that's on the court and they're not necessarily being the normal referee that they are, that's a pretty good indication that something might be happening, and it might have just been a bad day. I know myself, you rock up to games sometimes and you've just had one of the worst days ever, and all you want to do is just have a normal night at basketball, but then one player might say something that kind of triggers you. But I find it always beneficial, if that's me, if someone just goes, hey, just checking you're all good, or hey, like, don't worry about what's happened for the day, let's just focus on the game at hand and try to take your mind off whatever's happening outside of it. I think that little bit of a, we're here for you without you, if they're not wanting to go into a deep conversation about it, just say, hey, like, we've got your back, you're at basketball now with us and we're a family, so we can help you out. If you want to chat, we're here, but if not, let's just get back to the game, or let's have some fun out on the court together.
So we've all.
Yeah, I think that word "fun" is that Jackie mentioned. That's a key. I mean, a lot of the times in basketball, whatever age or level you're participating at, a lot of people forget that it's also supposed to be fun. Even at the professional level where they get paid for it, a lot of professional athletes forget that they're supposed to enjoy it. Even though it's a job, you're still supposed. What's the point of doing a job you don't like? So there should be some fun. So yeah, and that's just redirecting people. And like Kathy said, the communication is always key. I mean, I'm biased. I'm a Freudian analyst, so it's always about talking, but it's got to be genuine communication. So I think that's when you ask that question, if you're saying to people, "Are you okay?" It's kind of also we're talking about what Jackie had just said. It's got to be genuine. People are very, very good at knowing when people are not being genuine or not. So genuine communication is a real key there.
And just on that fun point, hopefully we've all had time for a bit of reflection. We all know what it felt like when the sport was taken away. That was no fun at all. Now perhaps we can reflect on how our behaviours may be impacting someone else's fun, whether it's the coach yelling at players and just telling them what they're doing wrong instead of telling them what they're doing right, whether it's parents whinging to club administrators about uniforms not being available, or spectators talking to referees. We all do need to take that breath and think, well, is what I'm doing impacting someone else's fun? And our aim should be to make it fun for everyone, because that's what sport, as you said, Pete, that's what sport's meant to be all about. So as long as it's genuine, but simple, are you okay? That's all we need to do. It's as simple as that.
I think good activity. I mean, if people have got time for it, I think good activities for coaches would be at least take a few minutes before a training session and just go around the group and get people to share their experience of isolation and lockdown and what they missed about the game, and then get everyone in the group to listen, because I think that will brings an empathy to it as well. So that's a chance that everyone feels that they're being listened to and they've got an opinion and a point of view. So I think if people have got time for that, that'd be a great activity for coaches to do. Take 10 minutes out of your training schedule. Yeah.
Proactively address the elephant in the room, so to speak.
Yeah.
And get a conversation going, which is what you were talking about, Kath, the importance of just get people to talk, get people to share.
Yes. Yeah, because you can ask the question, and then that gives that person the opportunity, whether they want to share or not, but at least it gives them the opportunity to say how they're going, rather than be afraid to ask the question. I think people, if they want to answer, they will, and truthfully, and so then they can get help. But I think someone asking a question shows they care. So I would always say to people, ask the question and leave it and see how it goes. Let that person share, and that's a trust factor too, how much you trust a person and how much you're prepared to be vulnerable with them. So, but my advice is always ask the question.
Cool. I think for some people there is a reluctance to ask the question, because if I ask, "Are you okay?" the person turns around and says, "No, mate, I'm struggling," and they start to tell me their problems. What the heck do I do? It's then confronting on me. Do you think is that a common response, or am I just a little bit of a social hermit?
No, I think that's a normal reaction for most people. There's a fear that somebody will say, "No, I'm not doing okay," and then the fear is, "Oh, then what do I say?" So It's just helping everyone in the associations be educated, as and that might be something that the GM does, or a particular person within each association just has a little bit of chat or a communication by email, just saying it's good to ask how people are going, share their experiences. Talk is good, and if people are not coping well, that you know where you can point them for help and support. So you don't have to play the role of psychologist and get them to lay on the couch and start talking to them. You can say, well, there's lots of resources. So there's Lifeline, there's Are You OK? For Kilsyth, we've got a chaplain. I think there's a few associations with chaplains, and so use the experts around you. So I think that's the role of the administration of the associations, is to give that information to people to share.
And
I think
sorry, Jackie.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think as peers, when we are asking, like, I'll obviously put stuff in referee terminology, but if we're asking one of our mates on the court if they are okay and they say they're not, just to actually take that few minutes to, well, what's going on, and then give the answer, and then just be honest with them. If you're not feeling that you're equipped to deal with it, you go, look, like, I don't understand where you're coming from. I'm not discrediting what you're saying, but I've not been in that position, and I'm really sorry that you're in that position. So how about we look at some ways that we can get you someone to talk to, or a way to make that a bit better for yourself, but not being afraid to not have the answers, that we might not all be equipped for those conversations, but to still support them as best we can and say, like, sorry that you're struggling. Let's find you some help through the resources that we have here in Australia. But just providing that support instead of going, well, I'm not going to ask it because I don't want that awkwardness of what if the response is that they aren't okay. I think at the end of the day, we'd rather feel uncomfortable for a few minutes within ourselves to support someone else than to have the unfortunate event of potentially losing somebody because they didn't feel that anyone was just asking if they are okay, or that they had those supports.
So is it that a big part is that we don't have to give them an answer? And I think sometimes we jump into solution mode and, I'll fix your problem. But in fact, if they've opened up to us, it's not about us fixing their problem. It's about us listening. And as you're suggesting, Jackie, perhaps, opening up the possibility of other avenues where they may be able to get some help. But is that really the role's not the right word? It makes it sound like a job. But is that the approach that we should take, just to listen and let them give as much as they want to give?
At Kilsyth, say, for example, a referee wasn't doing that well, the supervisor will know them because they're on every week, the same session. So they'll know a person and, how they're going, their behaviours, and if things are a bit different. So what happens at Kilsyth is they check in with that person and say, would you like to talk to Kath, or would you like me to contact Kath, but I need your permission, of course, because you've got the privacy. And so I've just found that a lot more people are being referred to me because that pressure's not on them. So for me, I would, I'm a little biased, but I'd like a chaplain in every basketball association, because it just takes the pressure off, like you say, the general manager or the CEO or the coach, just to have that someone there. And like you say, I don't always have the answers either, but I can refer to doctors, and we can refer to people who, psychologists or different people to help. But that's certainly been something I've noticed at Kilsyth, is the people who are hearing these things don't feel as burdened because they know they can pass them off to me, so to speak. Yeah.
What would you suggest doing in the situation where you've asked someone if they're okay, because their behaviour just seems a little off, perhaps they're more reactive, as you were talking about, Jackie, and they simply dismiss you going, no, I'm fine? Do we leave it at that?
I know personally, I'd probably be like, okay, well, that's good to know. Just know that if you ever need someone to listen to or just have a chat to, you can just give me a call or message, or just come up at any point. I think just that's fine. If they're choosing to not talk, that's entirely their choice. to not actually speak about what's happening, or they might not feel comfortable with me, but just to go, well, like, I'm here if you need, or you've got us. I know within any association, I'm sure anyone would be ready to have a listen, but just go, well, that's fine. I'm glad you're okay then, but just know that if you need to have a chat, we're here, any of us. So just whenever you feel comfortable to.
And so, Pete, can that in itself be helpful to the person to have been asked, even if they decide not to open up? But is it helpful that somebody asked them, are they okay? Someone showed that genuine interest?
Oh, absolutely. And Jackie's right. Some people might display behaviours that seem different. You might be concerned about that, but they might be in a place where they're not willing to share. So there's a lot of grey area there because, particularly when it comes to people who are thinking about self-harm, and you notice change in behaviours and they don't want to talk and they don't want to really communicate or engage at all. There might always be a feeling that, oh, what can I do more? But you do still have to respect the person's right not to talk about it. If people are dealing with some type of trauma, and trauma comes in all shapes and sizes, just like Kath said, just going back into lockdown again is a trauma for a lot of people. Just as a start to think that life might be getting back to normal again. So some people need time to grieve. Humans are generally pretty resilient, and also we do need time to grieve without people jumping on us and trying to get us to open up and work on an issue. So I think that's the best thing you can do, is to just say, oh, are you doing okay? And if someone says, no, I'm fine, just say, okay, I just wanted to check in. If you ever want to talk, you know where I am. So
okay. Kath, you mentioned how the supervisors at Kilsyth would always get the consent of the person before contacting you. They ask, would you like me to put you in contact with Kath? Is there ever a situation where you should escalate it without the person's permission, or should we always respect what they've said to us? Is effectively it's said in confidence, and it's up to them to actually agree to or want to take it further. What's your feeling on that?
Yeah, that's a hard one, because especially suicidal, this is somebody's life we're talking about. So, but I think trust and confidence is huge. That is, probably my number one, that I am a trustworthy but I would like to hope that in time, I've only had 3 years there, that people would find the confidence to talk and to come to me. But yeah, that's a flip of the coin one. It's such a difficult one. But if they're not prepared to talk about it, we just can't barge in there. We've still got to respect them and the way they deal with things, which isn't always easy, isn't always the way we would do it. But, we have had people share, hey, I'm not doing well. So you jump straight in there and help as best you can. So that's a really difficult question. And I think that can be, like I said, a flip of the coin, how you would approach that one.
So and this happened to me a number of years ago as a coach, where I had a player speak to me and express some thoughts around self-harm. Can I go and tell the parents? Am I meant to go and tell the parents? How do you handle that type of situation, Pete?
I think it always is to be open with the person you're talking to and say, look, I'm really concerned about this, and I think it'd be a good idea if I had a chat with your parents, and just try and investigate down that route a little bit. Sometimes we will say, no, I'm okay, and just say, well, look, I'm concerned, and I think, we should just have a little bit of a chat about it with your parents and see how we can help you. Some people will say, yeah, okay, that's okay, and you can set some boundaries as far as I'm only going to mention this, and I'm not going to tell them what you said about that. But yeah, it's a very grey area, and it's a scary area for everyone. So even for professionals, there's I work with all the NBL and WNBL players and have a pretty good relationship with all of them. And yeah, there's been a few times over the years where I've had some phone calls out of the blue and people are not doing well, and I'm very, very worried. Yeah, that's different for professionals. There's professional responsibility if you think someone's going to self-harm. But in the end, you can't, like I said, you've got to maintain that confidentiality and that trust. If you break that trust, that relationship's ended, the conversation stops. I think it's all of them. I say, look, well, if you don't, I can get you organised to talk to somebody in your local city or local town. Otherwise, do you mind me just checking in with you every couple of days? Is that okay? And every time they've said yes, that's okay. So for them, that might just be okay. Someone cares, and let me check in. So sometimes that can be a simple thing to do. It's like, can we have a chat tomorrow? If it's a kid, say, let me know how you're going. I just want to make sure you're okay. That's all.
And
it's a tough one with children. Sorry, Michael. It's a really tough one with children, because as an adult and a coach, you do have a responsibility, and there's a legal responsibility there too. About if you really believe there's self-harm, you've got to probably. That's something people should not take upon themselves, but maybe talk to the CEO. That's because there is a responsibility there for a minor. If you believe that they're really struggling and they might self-harm, that's discussed. So it's a really tough one. Yeah. But talk to if you're ever in that situation, talk to somebody that might have more knowledge.
And as both you and Kath have said, though, if you do feel you need to escalate it, to talk to the person and say, I feel I need to tell your parents, so that they're not blindsided by the fact that you didn't speak to their parents. I think that is probably important in the trust.
Yeah, and let them know, like, I'm following the rules. You've told me this, and I have a professional responsibility. I have to by law. Talk to your parents. What are you comfortable with me talking to them about? That's a good question to ask, because then they might just start with something. It gives a bit of an in. Yeah.
So Kath talked about how at Kilsyth there was an unfortunate event, which sort of was a start to her role coming on. And Pete, you gave us that great activity that coaches can do now as we get back. Just set aside first 10 minutes of practice to talk about how did you feel? How do you feel to be back? How was isolation? Jackie, are there other things that we can be doing just as part of our day-to-day management or coaching of teams or your academy that's not responding to any particular event or crisis, that's not because we think someone's in a bad place, but just to try and create more of a culture and a safety around the place that, hey, we do care about each other? What sort of activities can we do to create that culture?
Well, within the academy, we have our monthly catch-ups, and with the guys in the academy, a lot of them are around Australia, so it's a fair bit of Zoom, which has been even more useful during COVID. I know in the academy, I've tried to get a few guest speakers on for these guys to kind of come together in a online environment, but to learn the game that way, and just to not stress too much about there not being any basketball, so we can't develop that type of thing. At associations levels, when I was in Townsville and on the Gold Coast too, I try to create a team environment. A lot of our referees have either played or they're here because they want to be in that team environment. It's an individual thing to jump out on the court, but you are working with somebody. But to do something that's totally not basketball related. In Townsville, we had a couple of team bonding days where we just hired the laser skirmish, but we created that environment where they could get to know each other in a different setting. Not necessarily as referees, it's a pretty tough job at times. You've got calls that are being criticised every time you're on the court, or no calls. But just to have that team bonding experience, I find that very beneficial. As a player myself, I kind of try to create the environment within the ref space. But then just a general, if it's a normal thing to always ask, so what's been happening? How's everything been going? How are you going with the COVID stuff? Like, and just acknowledging that we as a team, or everybody within basketball at this period of time, has probably struggled during this time. Like, we're really missing the game. We want to just jump out on court. I was talking to a few of the academy members the other day. I was like, I don't even care if my first game back is under 8s. I just want to be on the court. But just acknowledging that we're all going through this together. It doesn't have to be because people are struggling. Like you said, it's just a generalized thing that we have ups and downs in life within basketball, outside of it too. So just creating that environment that it's a normal thing to just talk about how you're going. So then when you are struggling, it's just part of your normal conversation that you have.
One of the things we talked about in a recent meeting with the state managers was that people have become very comfortable now with Zoom and education being done by Zoom, and we're running courses, coaching courses, we're doing it all by Zoom. And that in fact, perhaps we can continue to do the education stuff by Zoom and focus more on the social interaction when we actually get people together in a place. Make it fun, whether it's activities not related to basketball, like you talked about there, Jackie, or whether it's, let's stay and watch the next game and have a water or a Coke or something to eat while we watch that game, and just find more ways to socialise than perhaps we did in the past, and particularly in that refereeing and coaching space, we often only get together to do a course or to educate, or there's new rules or something, but perhaps we should use those opportunities for more building the network, building the community and the trust that exists there. The Are You OK organisation that run Are You OK Day and a few things is they've now released a resource, and there'll be some links on our website to that, which is around how to start conversations. Are there any other really good resources that you've seen that people from a local association could reach out and have a look at, that can talk about how to have a conversation?
There was that. There's the obvious ones, Beyond Blue and Lifeline, but for more general things, it's been advertised recently, and it's actually called Reach Out, reachout.com.
Yep.
And it's for kids and adolescents. So it's tons of. I've been looking at. I've got it up on my screen now. I've been just looking at it. They've been advertising on the television. Sorry, I'm pointing at my television. But they've got lots of articles, discussions, and they've got tons of podcasts of talking about loneliness, racism, stress during study, dealing with homework, a million things, anxiety, the COVID, all those things. So they're teenagers talking about that themselves. Okay. So it's called reachout.com. So
I've just given
I've been having a look at it. It's a fantastic resource.
I've just given you permission to share your screen. Did you want to just put that up on the screen so people can?
Actually, I'm on my phone here, so
I've
got sorry, but
we'll make sure that's included in the resources that we have. Available on the website.
Yep.
Kath, anything you've come across that's?
Yeah, I agree with Peter. Beyond Blue is great. That's really good. And your local councils, they have a lot of things available for youth. So they're always a good resource to go to. There is an app now for Beyond Blue, and at Kilsyth through Sports Chaplaincy Australia, that's who I'm affiliated with, we actually had a guest speaker come out, and he spoke on suicide prevention evenings. So, there's a lot of places and a lot of resources out there now. So, like Peter said, there's different issues, so different resources are allocated to those different issues. So, but I think my feeling is once we get back to basketball, everybody will want to socialise. So I think this is a perfect opportunity to really get that social side of our associations up and running, because I think we're all a little bit starved of face-to-face conversations. So
absolutely. And Jackie, your academy, you've been partnering with another group in this space?
Yeah, so we're partnering up with Livin, the mental health stigma organisation. So we're having a Zoom next Wednesday, actually, for all of our academy members. Unfortunately, we lost an academy member 5 weeks ago due to mental health. So for me, it's a priority to ensure that we're just providing that support through JD8 for those guys. And then we're going to look to partner with Livin to any camps that we deliver with, partnering up with local associations, that becomes part of it as well. I think we put our guys in an environment from a young age as referees to jump out and referee games in an environment that's quite competitive, and people get emotionally excited and involved in the game, which is a natural thing. So just providing that support for those guys. Livin have a Live and Well program, which they do. They can do via Zoom. So for us, it's very suitable with the guys spread out across Australia. But I have had experience delivering programs with them when I worked for the North Queensland Cowboys. We did it with the Kerwin State High Boys, and just that environment, that providing a program that's just, it's okay to talk about stuff. It's not necessarily you're struggling with coming to do it. This is just a generalized thing. It needs to be a normal conversation that when we are struggling, it's completely normal. So just that personal experience with them, I've decided that if we can partner up with them and provide that for the guys. So we're reaching out to some of the local Geelong referees as well to get them on that Zoom, just so we can try to extend that support outside of JD8, just for the referees that might be struggling with that trauma that we all faced weeks ago. So.
And I think for me, sorry, Pete, go.
I was just going to say, and one more resource too, another way to make yourself feel good and feel better is to work and help others. Do things for your community. So once, we can get out and about again, there's a ton of places where people can volunteer and help out, deliver food and things. There's a group called, and again, I'll give you the link, you can put it up on the website. It's called playforlives.org. So they're an organisation which you sign up, and they've got 1 million volunteer opportunities for people. So a lot of the NBL, a lot of pro athletes, AFL players, NRL players, NBL, WNBL, all of that, they do that. So sometimes it's packing toys or delivering meals or making videos, just having, famous athletes making videos for kids and associations and things like that. So that's a great resource, is to put some time into helping others. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's another really great tip. And for me, I think that the big takeaway from this podcast, guys, is to have conversations and to be genuine, and to create and be in environments where people are willing to have conversations, to reach out. It's not being nosy, it's not being pushy, but respecting, of course, a person's response will be wherever they're comfortable being at that time. But just knowing that someone has reached out can have a positive impact on a person, even if they don't respond to you. So I think that's something that the basketball communities, and it is a large community, over 1 million participants around the country. It's one of the largest communities that we have. So hopefully we can see more of that. And I really want to thank you guys for your time today. It's been a great discussion. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having us.